The letter arrived on a Tuesday, sealed with wax that smelled faintly of lavender and regret, its edges curling like the dry leaves skittering across the cracked sidewalk of my childhood home in Monroe, Texas. Elena, darling, it began in a script that danced between elegance and urgency. Your mother speaks of you as if you're a poem half-written. Come finish the verse with me at Willowbrook. No sermons, no judgments. Just the quiet unraveling of what binds us. I crumpled it in my fist that night, the paper slicing my palm like a confession I wasn't ready to bleed, because Eloan Hargrove, my mother's old college friend, the one with stories of far-off places and a laugh that could coax secrets from stone, had no idea the chains I carried weren't the ones she imagined. By dawn the cut had scabbed over, a thin red line mirroring the fault lines in my life, the job at the local library where whispers followed me like ghosts, the family dinners where my silence about Sarah, the barista who'd stolen glances over lattes until I fled, hung heavier than the pecan pie. Mother had pressed the invitation into my hand weeks ago, her eyes soft with that missionary zeal she'd honed in Sunday school. Eloan's place in Vermont is magic, honey. A retreat for the spirit. You've been so adrift. Adrift. The word stung because it was true, a slow drowning in the expectations of Monroe, where love was a straight line from altar to cradle, and anything curving toward the shadows was sin wrapped in shame. I booked the ticket on impulse, the kind that comes from staring too long at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, wondering if faith meant believing in a God who saw you whole, or just the parts that fit the frame. The flight to Burlington was a blur of turbulence and half-read magazines, each jolt mirroring the knot in my chest. Willowbrook lay an hour's drive north, tucked into the Green Mountains like a secret whispered to the wind. Eloan met me at the gate, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a loose braid, wearing a linen dress the color of storm clouds. She was 47 or so Mother said, but time had carved her with a grace that made years seem like allies, not thieves. Elena, she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of sage and earth, you've got your mother's fire but your father's quiet storm. I mumbled something about the drive, avoiding her gaze, those hazel eyes that seemed to see through the polite armor I'd packed in my suitcase. The retreat center was no ashram of polished wood and yoga mats. It was a rambling farmhouse from the 1800s, its porch sagging under ivy like an old man's weary shoulders. 9 others had arrived before me, women mostly, from cities and hollows alike, their stories hinted at in the way they clutched mugs of herbal tea or stared too long at the horizon. We gathered that first evening in the great room, fire crackling in a stone hearth that swallowed the chill. Eloan lit candles, not for show, but to remind us, she said, that light persists even when the wick frays. This isn't about finding God, she began, her voice a low hymn, or losing him. It's about the spaces in between, where doubt and desire tangle like roots under soil. I sat on the edge of a faded quilt, knees drawn up, listening as she spoke of her own unraveling. A marriage dissolved in the courts of Atlanta, a church that branded her questions heresy, the quiet nights in this very house where she'd learned to forgive the God who'd made her crave what the world called wrong. Her words landed soft at first, like rain on parched ground, but then sharper, probing. What binds you, sisters? Not the ropes we see, but the ones woven from whispers. Family, faith, the fear of being unloved as you are. Eyes turned to me unbidden, and I felt the heat rise, the old instinct to shrink. But Eloan's gaze held steady, an invitation wrapped in understanding, and for the first time in years, I didn't look away. That night sleep evaded me like a lover's touch. The room I shared with Lila, a painter from Portland with ink-stained fingers and a smile like cracked porcelain, hummed with the house's settling bones. Lila stirred once, murmuring about dreams of oceans, but I lay awake, replaying Eloan's voice, the way it cracked on Unloved. By morning the group scattered to the trails, journals in hand, tasked with mapping the invisible weights we carried. Mine led me to a birch grove, where sunlight slanted through leaves like accusations. I wrote of Sarah, the stolen kisses in her apartment above the coffee shop, the way her hands mapped my skin as if it were a forbidden atlas. Then the end. Her tears when I pulled back, whispering, "This isn't me. Not here." The words blurred on the page, ink mingling with salt. Eloan found me there hours later, her footsteps silent as prayer. "The trees listen better than people," she said, settling beside me on a mossy log. No pity in her tone, just space. A vast breathing thing. I told her fragments. The church youth group that preached love but eyed my tomboy ways with suspicion. The father's belt that marked disobedience. The mother's prayers that begged for a daughter who fit. Aloan nodded, tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick. Faith isn't a cage, Elena. It's the key you forge in the dark. Her hand brushed mine then, accidental or not. A spark that lingered like ember. I pulled away, heart hammering, because in Monroe touch like that was theft, but here under Vermont's indifferent sky it felt like reclamation. One afternoon, as thunder grumbled distant threats, we gathered in the attic studio. A loft cluttered with canvases and half-finished sculptures. Eloan dimmed the lamps, lit incense that curled like doubts, and asked us to write letters to our younger selves. The girls who'd first felt the stirrings, the confusion blooming like wildflowers in cracked concrete. Mine poured out in a torrent. Dear Elena at 16, the one hiding novels under the bed because their heroines kissed in the rain. It's not sin. It's sacrament. Reading it aloud, voice trembling, I felt the room hold its breath, Eloan's eyes meeting mine across the circle. A nod that said, I see you whole. But cracks formed, subtle as frost on glass. Whispers among the group about Eloan's past. Rumors from Atlanta days. A scandal hushed with money and ministry ties. She left a wife behind. Someone murmured over lunch, forks clinking like judgments. Traded vows for this. Wandering. I defended her without thinking, words sharp as burrs. She's more honest than any altar I've known. The table fell quiet, eyes on me, and in that pause I glimpsed my own reflection, defending her as if she were the part of me I'd yet to claim. Evenings brought fireside songs, guitars strummed to folk tunes that mourned lost loves and celebrated the stubborn heart. Lila and I grew close, our talk stretching into the small hours, her laugh a balm on old wounds. But it was Eloan who haunted my thoughts, her stories unfolding like maps to hidden countries. One night, after the others slept, she knocked on my door, holding a bottle of elderberry wine. Can't sleep? She asked, and we sat on the porch swing, stars wheeling overhead like indifferent witnesses. She spoke of her marriage then, not as failure, but as a mirror cracked by truths too bright to contain. I loved him, Elena, in the way you love a language you never fully speak. But it was her, in the choir loft, who taught me the melody. Her voice softened on her, a shadow passing over her face. I leaned closer, drawn by the vulnerability, the way her fingers twisted the glass stem like a rosary. And you? She prompted gently. The wine loosened my tongue. Sarah's scent of vanilla and rain, the terror of exposure in a town where queerness was the devil's graffiti. Eloan's hand found mine again, deliberate this time, her thumb tracing a slow circle on my knuckle. Heat bloomed low in my belly, a forbidden tide, and I didn't pull away. The retreat's heart beat in those stolen moments. Walks where our shoulders brushed, shared glances over breakfast that lingered like promises. The group noticed, murmurs turning to sidelong looks, but Eloan deflected with grace, turning suspicion into lessons on grace. Yet doubt crept in, a serpent in the garden. Letters from home arrived. Mother's note laced with concern. Be careful, love. Eloan's always been a free spirit, but spirits can lead astray. Father's card, curt. Remember who you are. Who I was, a daughter, a believer, a secret keeper. The weight pressed, familiar as sin. Midway through we undertook the Vale Walk, blindfolded treks through the woods, guided by trust. Eloan led me, her voice a lifeline through the rustle of leaves and snap of twigs. Step where I step, she murmured, her hand warm on my elbow. In that darkness, confessions spilled. My fear of loving women in a world that loved me less for it, her own scars from a church that excommunicated her for a kiss. When we emerged, the blindfold damp with tears, she cupped my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks. Love isn't faith's test, Elena. It's the proof. But proof's fracture. That night, Lila cornered me in the kitchen, eyes shadowed. She's playing you, Elena. I heard her on the phone. Atlanta's calling her back. Some reconciliation with the old life. This retreat? It's her last grasp at rebellion before she folds. My stomach twisted, betrayal's first bite. Eloan with her maps and melodies, weaving me into her web only to abandon the thread? I confronted her at dawn, words tumbling like stones. Is this real, or just another sermon you preach to feel holy? Her face crumpled, not in defense but sorrow. It's real, but it's ending. The church elders, my family, they've offered terms. I go back or lose everything. The house, the legacy. Legacy. The word soured, a chain disguised as gold. I stormed to the pond, skipping stones across the water until my arm ached. Each plunk a echo of the rift. The group fractured too. Arguments over dinner about authenticity, privilege, the cost of freedom when class and creed colluded to cage. Yet in the wreckage something stirred. Lila pulled me aside, her touch sisterly now, not seeking. Don't let her dim your light. You're more than her mirror. We talked till stars pricked the sky, sharing the raw edges of our hurts, and in her honesty, I found a mirror clearer than a Lowen's haze. The retreat pressed on, activities turning inward. Art therapy where I painted storms in ochre and blue, symbolizing the turmoil of love deemed unholy. Lowen withdrew, her guidance fainter, but her eyes sought mine across rooms, pleading for understanding I couldn't yet give. The penultimate day brought rain, relentless sheets that turned paths to mud, mirroring the slide within. We huddled in the great room, sharing final letters, not to ourselves, but to those we'd loved and lost. Mine was to Sarah, words of apology scrawled in looping script. I ran because I feared the world's wrath, not yours. Forgive the girl who couldn't yet believe in us. Reading it, voice steady for the first time, I felt the room's collective exhale, a chorus of release. Elowen went last, her letter to the wife from Atlanta, voice breaking on lines of regret and release. I chose truth over us, but truth chose me whole. Afterward, as thunder rolled, she found me in the birch grove, rain soaking us both. I leave tomorrow, she said, water streaming down her face like tears. Not for them, for me. To close the door clean. Betrayal twisted anew but softer now, laced with empathy. I saw her not as betrayer, but kin in the struggle, both of U.S. daughters of doctrines that demanded halves. Our goodbye was a hug, fierce and fleeting, her whisper in my ear. Your faith in love? It's stronger than any retreat. Trust it. The group dispersed the next morning. Hugs tear-streaked under clearing skies. Lila slipped me her number. A promise of coffee in Portland someday. Driving to Burlington, the mountains receding like old lovers, I replayed it all, the hooks of hurt, the unraveling of illusions. Monroe waited, with its judgments in my half-life, but something had shifted. In the rearview, Willowbrook faded, but the key Lowen spoke of? It turned in my lock now. Back home, the library's fluorescent hum felt alien. Mother's hugs tighter with unspoken questions. Did it help? She asked over pot roast, and I nodded, words careful. It reminded me God's bigger than our boxes. Nights brought dreams of birch groves and hazel eyes, but also resolve. I called Sarah one evening, voice quaking. Can we talk? Really talk? Her yes was tentative, a bridge half-built, but it was ours. Months later, news came via postcard. Lowen, settled in a small Oregon cabin, leading workshops for queer women of faith. No return to Atlanta's altars. She'd chosen the key over the cage. I framed the card beside my painting from the retreat, storms giving way to dawn. Love, I learned, isn't tested in retreats or revelations. It's forged in the quiet acts of staying, of choosing wholeness over whispers. In Monroe's unyielding light, I began to live it, one honest breath at a time. The drive from Monroe to the outskirts of Austin felt like shedding skin. Each mile marker a peel of the old self clinging too tight. I told Mother I needed space. A weekend away, nothing more. But the truth was sharper, a blade honed by Willowbrook's echoes. Sarah's apartment was above the coffee shop still. Its stairs creaking under my hesitant steps. The door opening to vanilla-scented air that wrapped around me like forgiveness. She stood there, hair tousled from sleep despite the noon hour, her eyes, those deep brown pools I'd drowned in once, wary but warm. Elena, she said, not a question, just my name like a prayer long unanswered. We talked on her threadbare couch, mugs of chamomile steaming between us, the words tumbling slow at first, then in floods. I spoke of Vermont, not Lowen by name, but the woman who'd cracked me open, the retreat's veil that let me see my desires not as demons but directions. Sarah listened, fingers tracing the mug's rim, her silence a canvas for my confessions. I ran because I thought love like ours was a sentence, I admitted, voice cracking on the edge of the word. But it's the story I want to write. She reached then, tentative, her hand covering mine, and the touch reignited sparks I'd banked for shame's sake. That night we kissed. Not the frantic theft of before, but slow, deliberate, a reclamation under the hum of city lights filtering through blinds. Austin became our fragile harbor, weekends stolen from Monroe's gaze. We wandered Barton Springs, the spring-fed pool, a cool baptism where her laughter echoed off cypress knees, free and fierce. Picnics in Zilker Park, where she'd sketch me in charcoal, capturing not my form, but the light in my eyes she'd missed. Yet shadows lingered, class's quiet cruelty seeping in. Sarah worked doubles at the shop, her tips funding art classes she dreamed of turning pro, while I, with my library salary and family safety net, felt the gulf like a fault line. "You're from money," she teased once, half-joking, as we shared tacos from a truck, "even if it's Old South kind." But the jest hid truths: her single mom upbringing in the barrios, my father's ranch sprawling acres that whispered privilege. Mother sensed the shift, her calls laced with probes. "Seeing someone?" she'd ask, casual over the phone, but her pause afterward begged for the lie I'd once fed her. I held back, the words a woman lodged like thorns, because in our church circle love's grammar was rigid: husband, home, heirs. Father's sermons from the pulpit thundered on Sundays via Zoom, fire and brimstone reminders of paths straight and narrow. "The world tempts with crooked ways," he'd intone, and I'd mute the screen, heart pounding, wondering if he preached to the congregation or the daughter he prayed to straighten. Eloan's influence lingered like a half-heard song, her postcard a talisman on my fridge. I wrote her once, pages of gratitude and questions. "How do you love when the world builds walls?" Her reply came weeks later, scrawled on recycled paper. "By remembering love isn't possession, it's permission to be seen." Permission. The word fueled me, pushing me toward Sarah's world, volunteering at the shop's queer youth nights, where teens with eyes like mine shared stories of hiding. One boy, barely 16, clutched my hand during a circle share, whispering, "Does it get easier?" I thought of Willowbrook's Birches, a low and steady voice, and squeezed back. "It gets braver." But bravery phrase. Fall brought storms, literal and not, the kind that uproot oaks in Monroe, mirroring the gales in my chest. Sarah's ex, a shadow from her past named Riley, resurfaced via text, drunk dialing at midnight about old wounds. I found the messages the next morning, her phone left charging, words like "miss you," and "we were good" glowing accusatory. Jealousy hit like bile, not just of Riley, but the ease of their shared straightness, the life Sarah might reclaim without my complications. "It's nothing," she insisted when confronted, eyes flashing hurt. "You're the one I choose." But doubt seeded, watered by my own fears, of being the experiment, the detour from normalcy. We fought that night, words hurled like hail. Her accusing me of clinging to family ghosts, me snapping that her past was a map I couldn't read. Doors slammed, silence stretched, and by dawn I drove back to Monroe, tires chewing asphalt, tears blurring taillights. Home was a hollow welcome, motherless, her arms open but eyes searching. "Trouble in paradise?" she asked, and I laughed it off, the sound brittle as autumn leaves. Days blurred into routine. Shelving books with mechanical precision, avoiding the romance section where spines whispered of forbidden loves. Father's knowing glances over dinner spoke volumes, his prodigal jokes landing like judgments. A package arrived midweek, Eloan's handwriting on the box. Inside, a journal bound in leather soft as skin, pages filled with prompts on faith and desire, her note tucked in. "For the stories you haven't told." I pored over it that night, pen scratching furious replies to ghosts. Sarah, the girl who'd fled. Eloan, the guide who'd vanished. Writing unearthed the core. My love for Sarah wasn't rebellion but revelation, a faith deeper than any creed. I called her at midnight, voice raw. "I'm sorry. Let's really try." Her yes came soft, laced with relief, and we planned a visit, neutral ground in Dallas, away from both our worlds. Dallas shimmered with possibility, a city of glass towers and hidden alleys where queerness bloomed in bars with rainbow flags fluttering like defiant prayers. We met at a cafe in Oaklawn, her arriving with wild curls and a grin that melted reservations. Conversations flowed easier now, boundaries redrawn. No exes invoked, no family specters summoned. We walked the Katy Trail at dusk, hands linked, the skylines glow a backdrop to her stories of growing up Latina in Texas. The machismo that choked her dreams, my own tales of Sunday school shame. Laughter came freer, touches lingered longer, and in a hotel room that night, we explored each other with the reverence of pilgrims, bodies mapping sacred ground. But society's undercurrent pulled, insistent as tide. At a queer open mic, a poet's verses on class and color struck too close, lines about brown girls loving white passing privilege, the unspoken hierarchies in bed and beyond. Sarah stiffened beside me, her hand slipping from mine. "It's not us," I whispered, but the seed of unease sprouted, conversations turning to what-ifs. Her dreams pulling her to Austin's art scene, my roots anchoring me to Monroe's soil. "Love shouldn't feel like compromise," she said one evening, staring at the ceiling, and the words hung a prophecy unspoken. Winter crept in, frosting windows and hearts alike. Mother's annual Christmas party loomed, a tableau of Monroe's elite. Ranchers in Stetsons, wives with pearl clutches, the pastor's wife eyeing me like a puzzle unsolved. I brought Sarah as a friend from Austin. The lie bitter on my tongue, but her charm disarmed them, her bilingual banter charming father's cronies. Yet under the mistletoe as carols droned a cousin's slur slipped, casual cutting. "You girls sticking together? Careful, Austin's got that city rot." Laughter followed, but Sarah's smile froze, and in the guest room later she wept silent tears. "I can't do half-lives, Elena. Not anymore." The fight that followed was cataclysmic, words weaponized. Her demanding visibility, me pleading for time, the chasm of our worlds yawning wide. "Your faith, it's a chain," she hurled, and the truth landed like a slap. I left at dawn, the party's tinsel mocking me from the rearview, driving aimlessly until Vermont's pull tugged insistent. Willowbrook in snow was a fairy tale turned stark, the farmhouse blanketed white, Eloan's truck buried under drifts. She answered the door in flannel and wonder, pulling me into warmth that smelled of pine and possibility. We talked for days, snowbound, her cabin a confessional. I spilled it all. Sarah's fire, the party's poison, the war between heart and heritage. Eloan listened, then shared her own winter of doubt, the Atlanta offer she'd rejected, the alimony battles that stripped her bare. "Betrayal isn't just another's knife," she said, stirring soup over the stove. "It's the self you betray for silence." Her wisdom was a mirror, reflecting my complicity in the cage. One evening as flakes danced outside, she took my hand, not as guide but equal. "You're not adrift, Elena. You're navigating." The kiss that followed was inevitable, soft as snowfall, a test not of faith but of freedom. Guilt followed like thaw's mud, Sarah's unanswered texts piling like drifts. I confessed to Eloan the next morning, her response measured. "Love isn't monopoly. It's multiplication." She urged me home to Sarah, to the messy truth. The drive south was penance, radio hymns mocking my detour. Sarah met me at the shop, eyes storm-tossed. "Where were you?" she demanded, and I told her Vermont. Eloan, the kiss that clarified, not complicated. Shock then sorrow crossed her face. "I thought we were building," she whispered, but in her gaze I saw release, not resentment. We parted as friends, the bridge burned but embers warm for memory. Back in Monroe, spring unfurled tentative, dogwoods blooming pink against blue skies. Mother's questions softened to acceptance, her "I'm here" a quiet olive branch. I joined a local queer alliance, tentative steps into visibility, sharing stories with women whose faces echoed mine. Southern, scarred, seeking. Father's sermon still thundered, but I attended less, finding God in sunrise runs, in the library's quiet aisles where books whispered of loves unbound. Eloan's next letter arrived with wildflowers pressed between pages. "The retreat continues in you." It did, testing faith not in grand gestures, but daily devotions to self. Love, I learned, demands no altars, only altars we build from ruins. Summer in Monroe baked the earth to powder, mirages dancing on highways like false hopes, and I chased them anyway, driving to Austin monthly for Sarah's exhibits. Small gallery shows where her canvases bled emotion, portraits of women with eyes like defiant stars. Our friendship had ossified into something sturdy, platonic pillars supporting each other through storms. She'd started dating a sculptor named Mia, a soft-spoken Chicana with hands callous from clay, and watching them at openings, fingers intertwined, laughter easy, I felt not jealousy but a quiet pride, the ache dulled to gratitude for what we'd carved from wreckage. Yet Alohan's shadow lengthened, her letters turning confessional, pages filled with Oregon's rains mirroring inner deluges. She'd begun a relationship with a local herbalist, Tessa, whose gardens yielded salves for body and soul. But doubt gnawed. Is this love or just healing's disguise? Her words echoed my own nocturnal wrestlings, the bed too vast for one, dreams tangling Vermont snow with Texas heat. I wrote back fiercely. Love's no disguise, it's the face you choose daily. But ink belied the pull, a gravitational tug toward her cabin. Her voice on late-night calls a siren's call across miles. Work at the library shifted too, the head librarian retiring and leaving me interim charge, a role that demanded boldness I was only beginning to claim. I curated a display on queer Southern voices, Walt Whitman reimagined through Audre Lorde, Carson McCullers' Hearts and Lonely Hunters, drawing glares from patrons but nods from the young, the hidden. One afternoon, a girl no older than 20, badge reading Juniper from the res, lingered, fingers tracing spines. This is brave, she murmured, and in her eyes Navajo sharp seeking. I saw my 16-year-old self. We talked over closing, her stories of reservation silences, my Monroe masks, forging a bond that felt like mentorship, or perhaps the sisterhood I'd craved. Mother noticed the changes, her bridge club chatter turning to gentle interrogations. You've got a glow, Elena. Like you're finally breathing. Over sweet tea on the porch, swing creaking like old bones, I edged closer to truth. I've been seeing someone. A woman. The words hung, fragile as moth wings, but she didn't shatter. Instead, tears welled, not condemnation but confession. I knew, honey. Prayed you'd find peace in it. Her own youth surfaced then. A college crush on a roommate, hushed for the era's sake, buried under marriage and ministry. Don't let fear steal your story like it did mine. The revelation bridged us, her hand in mine, a vow renewed. Father's reaction brewed slower, a storm cloud on the horizon. He cornered me after a family barbecue, smoke from the grill still curling, his voice low thunder. Heard whispers about your displays at the library. This isn't us, Elena. It's the devil's distraction. His words lashed, evoking belt memories, but I stood firm, voice steady. It's me, Dad. The daughter you raised to question, to love wholly. He turned away, shoulders rigid, but later that night a text. Praying for clarity, for both of us. Not absolution but a crack in the armor, light seeping through. Emboldened, I planned a trip to Oregon, framing it as research for a library program on spiritual wellness. Alohan met me at the Portland airport, her embrace lingering, the scent of lavender sharper now laced with pine. Tessa joined us for dinner that first night, a woman with sun-freckled skin and a laugh like river stones, her presence diffusing the air's charge. We hiked the Columbia Gorge the next day, waterfalls thundering secrets, trails slick with mist. Conversation flowed of Tessa's indigenous roots, the blend of herbal lore and queer reclamation, Alohan's eyes softening when she spoke of her. Jealousy flickered, brief as a struck match, but I doused it with honesty. Over campfire that evening, sharing Sarah's growth, my library leaps. You've built something real, I told Alohan, and her nod was grateful, the space between us shifting from magnetic to mutual. Yet solitude brought reckonings. Alone in the guest loft, rain pattering roof like insistent fingers, I journaled by lantern light, prompts from her gift leading to depths. What if love's test is solitude's forge? Dreams came vivid, Alohan as birch ghost, Sarah as spring rain, mother as oak steadfast. Awakening tangled in sheets, heart racing, I realized the pull wasn't possession but pattern. Women who'd taught me to claim my queerness, each a chapter not the volume. I left Oregon lighter, Tessa's salve jar in my bag a tangible blessing, Alohan's farewell hug chased, charged with come back as friend, always. Fall's harvest brought convergence. Sarah invited me to her first solo show in Austin, canvases exploring love's fractures, queer bodies in southern landscapes, magnolias entwined with rainbows. The gallery buzzed with artists, activists, a tapestry of lives I'd only glimpsed. Mia was there, arm around Sarah's waist, but she pulled me aside, eyes shining. "This one's for you, the Storm series. Your retreat inspired it." Tears pricked as I studied the pieces, blues and grays birthing golds, a visual hymn to breaking free. We toasted later at a dive bar, queer anthems thumping, bodies swaying in solidarity. Monroe's chill deepened, but so did Roots. I organized the library's first queer story hour, Juniper co-hosting, drawing a crowd of wary parents and wide-eyed kids. Father's absence spoke volumes, but mother's presence, hand on my shoulder as I read from Lord, mended more. Whispers circulated, town's grapevine twisting truths, but resilience bloomed. Neighbors nodding instead of staring. A cousin's tentative "proud of you" text. Winter solstice neared, Yule logs crackling promises. Aloan called, voice buoyant. Tessa and I engaged. Small ceremony in the gorge. Joy surged, pure as mountain air. "Be there," she asked, and I was flying west for a weekend of vows under evergreens, rings exchanged with sage smoke curling. Witnessing their union, Aloan's eyes on Tessa like sunrise, crystallized my own faith. Love is ceremony, not captivity. Returning, snow-dusted Monroe, blanketing old wounds. Sarah's holiday card arrived, Mia's photo tucked in, their happiness a mirror to mine. Single but whole, I walked the ranch at dawn, father's figure distant by the fence. He turned as I approached, coffee steaming in his mug. "Heard about the event. Brave." "No more, but enough, a truce." As Yule fires died to embers, I felt the story's arc bend toward light. Faith in love not tested but testified. The new year dawned brittle, frost-etching windows like accusations, and Monroe's underbelly stirred. Anonymous letters slipped under the library door, scripture-twisted screeds decrying sodomite shelves, the words slashing like father's old belt. I burned them in the backyard fire pit, flames devouring hate's paper heart. But ash lingered, a reminder that progress was no straight path, but a switchback scarred by slides. Juniper noticed first, her res-honed instincts sharp. "They're scared, Elena, of what you make possible." Her words armored me, our coffee meetups turning strategic, expanding the program, partnering with Austin's Queer Center for workshops on resilience. Sarah's show had rippled outward, invitations pouring in for guest spots, her star ascending while Mia's sculptures grounded them, a balance I envied in my solitary orbit. We texted daily, her updates a lifeline. A grant won, a poem published, Mia's proposal mishap involving clay and champagne. "Your turn for chaos," she teased, and I laughed, but the void echoed. Nights alone with journals, pen tracing what-ifs of partners past and phantoms future. Aloan's wedding photos arrived via email, Tessa's grin radiant. Their dance under string lights a tableau of triumph. "Come visit soon," the note read. "The gorge misses your stories." Spring thawed the ground, but not all freezes. Father's health faltered, a heart scare during calving season, the ranch vet rushing him to Tyler under siren wail. Mother called frantic, her voice fraying. "He's asking for you." The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret, monitors beeping like metronomes to our silences. He gripped my hand, skin paper thin, eyes meeting mine without armor. "I was wrong," he rasped, words labored. "About the crooked ways. Love's straight enough if it's true." Tears tracked his temples and mine fell unchecked, the prodigal not me, but him returning to a daughter he'd half lost. Recovery was slow, conversations halting over checkers in his den, his sermon softening to questions. "How do you know it's right?" I'd pause, thinking of Aloan's keys, Sarah's storms. "When it sets you free." Emboldened by mending, I dipped into dating. Apps swiping through faces, coffee meetups in Waco where accents twang familiar. There was Ellis, a teacher from Fort Worth with a poet's tongue and a rancher's hands, our first date at a vineyard yielding easy talk of books and burdens. She shared of coming out mid-divorce, the town's discussed like sandpaper on fresh ink. Kisses followed, tentative under vineyard arcs, her touch evoking safety, not sparks. But Ellis faded after 3 dates, her ex's reconciliation call pulling her back to straight lines, leaving me with a bottle of Merlot and a lesson. Love's not always the blaze but the steady burn. Juniper introduced me to the circle then. A loose collective of queer women in East Texas, gatherings in barns and backyards, potlucks laced with tamales and tales. There, amid laughter and lamplight, I met Rowan, a 32-year-old environmental lawyer from Houston. Her hair cropped short like a challenge, eyes green as pine sap. She spoke little at first, but her questions cut deep. "What's the wildest truth you've told lately?" Over cornbread, I shared Willowbrook's Veils, Lowen's unintended test, and she leaned in, her "That's poetry," a hook sinking soft. We exchanged numbers, texts blooming into drives, her truck rumbling to hidden creeks where we'd skip stones, debating faith's follies and society's scaffolds. Rowan's world was a revelation. City polish over country grit, her firm fighting pipelines that scarred lands like old grudges. She carried scars too, a brother's disownment after her wedding to a woman who'd left for ministry, the irony bitter as gall. "Family's the first betrayal," she said one twilight by the brazos, fireflies winking complicit. I nodded, sharing father's thaw, mother's buried bloom. Our first kiss came unbidden, her lips tasting of river and resolve, a current pulling me under willingly. Nights followed in her Houston loft, bodies entwining with the reverence of explorers, her whispers mapping desires I'd only dreamed. But bliss bruises. Rowan's case heated. A class action against a oil giant, depositions dragging her to D.C., calls sparse and strained. "It's the fight," she'd say, voice edged with exhaustion, but distance bred doubts, texts unread till dawn. Monroe pulled too, the library vandalized one night. Windows soaked with slurs, books scattered like fallen soldiers. Police shrugged, "Kids." But Juniper and I cleaned till midnight, her arm around my shoulders. "They're losing ground." Mother brought pie, father sent a check for repairs, silent solidarity, but the town's fracture widened, whispers turning to stares at the grocery, old friends crossing aisles. Climax brewed in June, heat wave shimmering air like fever dreams. Rowan returned triumphant, case settled but hollow-eyed. "They bought us off," she confessed over wine on her balcony, city lights sprawling below like a conquered map. "Justice feels like surrender." I held her, but her grip tightened, desperate. Love-making that night fierce, almost frantic, a grasping against voids. Morning brought truth. "I love you, Elena, but it's another pipeline. Beautiful, but it leaks." Her words gutted, betrayal's echo from Elo and Sarah, now her love as temporary truce. She left for a fellowship in Seattle, packing light, her goodbye a note on the counter. "You're the wild truth I needed. Be free." Devastation crashed, days blurring in bed, curtains drawn against sun's indifference. Juniper dragged me out, hikes where sweat purged sorrow, her "you're not broken, just bent toward light," a mantra etched. Sarah called, her voice bomb. "Come to Austin. Mia's making tamales." The weekend healed in fragments, cooking, crying, dancing to Selena till dawn. Their love a model of endurance. Back in Monroe, summer waned, cicadas dirging ends. I confronted father outright, over coffee black as regrets. "Why the change?" He sighed, photo album opening to yellowed pics. Him young, arm around a boy, not mother. "Lost him to fear. Won't lose you to mine." The confession unlocked floods, his youth's queer flicker snuffed by sermons. A life half-lived in atonement. "Love whoever sets your soul right," he said, and the absolution washed clean. A Lowen solstice card arrived. Gorge wildflowers pressed. Roots deepen in drought. I wrote back, pages of Rowan's rupture, father's revelation, story as sacrament. Fall leaves turned, and with them my gaze inward. Love's tests not in holding but releasing. Faith in its return reshaped. Autumn's palette bled gold and crimson across Monroe's fields, harvest moon swelling like unspoken promises, and I harvested my own. Resigning from the library's interim role for a grant-funded position curating digital archives on Southern queer history, a remote gig allowing drifts to conferences, connections blooming like late asters. Juniper co-led the local circle now, her energy a spark igniting events. Pride picnics in pastures, storytelling slams under harvest moons. I emceed one, voice steady under stars, sharing Willowbrook's Genesis, the crowd's nods a chorus of kinship. Sarah's life flourished, a baby on the way. Mia's sperm donor a circle friend. Their nursery painted in murals of resilient women. Visits to Austin became rituals, my hand on her belly feeling kicks like affirmations. Her Auntie Elena. Title: A Crown of Chosen Family. "You're glowing again," she noted one afternoon, rocking on their porch as rain-pattered tin roof. "Found your stride." I smiled, thinking of Eloan's journals, Father's Fragile Bridge. Learning to dance on cracks. Eloan and Tessa's life wove deeper, adopting a rescue dog named Sage, their gorge cabin expanding to host retreats, queer faith circles blending ceremony and counsel. An invitation came. "Lead a session? Your voice is the one they need." Hesitation flickered, imposter echoes, but Juniper urged, "You're the map now." I flew west in October, leaves aflame along the river. The workshop: a circle of 20, trans elders from Portland by moms from Boise, their stories a tapestry of triumphs torn. I spoke of betrayal's gifts, Eloan's test, Sarah's storm, Rowan's release. Framing love as liturgy, society's strictures as shadows we outgrow. Afterward, a young woman barely out hugged me fierce. "You made God feel possible again." Tears stung. Purpose solidified. Monroe's winter whispered warnings, first frost claiming gardens, but community warmed. The circle grew, allying with the Black church down the road, interfaith potlucks where gospel met queer carols, father's pewmates thawing to tentative welcomes. Mother hosted the first, her pecan pies a peace offering, and when a deacon's wife asked about that lifestyle, she interjected soft, "It's love like ours, just braver." Pride swelled, her evolution a quiet miracle. Romance stirred subtle at a Waco-lit fest. A poet named Leora, 29, with ink-laced arms and a voice like smoked honey. We bonded over panels on narrative reclamation. Her work exploring Jewish queer intersections in the South, mine Southern evangelical echoes. Coffee turned to dinners, her apartment a haven of bookshelves groaning under tomes, cats weaving figure eights. Kisses came natural, her touch patient, attuned to my rhythms. Nights of whispered histories, her Brooklyn transplant tales mingling with my Texas taproots. "You're home in the in-between," she murmured once, fingers tracing my collarbone, and the words settled like benediction. But in-betweens breed tensions. Leora's grant pulled her to Nashville for a semester. Distance a familiar foe. Texts bridged gaps, calls laced with longing but cracks spidered. Her immersion in academic circles, my rooted routines clashing like dialects. A weekend visit brought the fracture, her friend's dinner party progressive patter turning patronizing. "Texas? How do you survive the Bible Belt?" Leora laughed it off, but I bristled, defending Monroe's hidden hearts, the conversation curdling to silence. "It's not them," she soothed later, but doubt seeded. Was I relic or revelation? Father's remission held, but age etched deeper. His ranch sold in parcels to fund retirement, the land's loss a metaphor for yielding. We walked the fences one crisp morning, his cane tapping rhythm, sharing silences pregnant with peace. "Proud of the woman you're becoming," he said, unprompted, and the words unlocked a sob. Decades of dreading his disdain dissolved in dawn's light. Eloan's circle retreat expanded my world further. Virtual sessions bridging coasts, women from Vermont's hollows to California's canyons sharing screens of solidarity. Tessa facilitated herbal rituals, packets mailed with mugwort for dreams, lavender for letting go. One night, post-call, Leora joined, her poetry reading a bridge, verses on diaspora loves, resonating with my southern sojourns. We made love after, slow and sacred, but morning brought her news. Nashville extension another year. "Come with?" she asked, eyes hopeful but roots rebelled. Monroe's circle needed me, Juniper's youth group bloomed under our wing. "I can't uproot," I said, gentle but firm, and her nod was understanding, the parting amicable, another chapter closed with grace. Spring equinox heralded renewal, the circle's first regional gathering in a hill country vineyard. Tents pitched under live oaks, workshops on ancestral healing, queer rituals rewriting scripture. Sarah waddled in, belly full term, Mia's arm steadying, their presence a talisman. Juniper led a drum circle, beats pulsing like heartbeats unbound. I facilitated a veil walk redux, blindfolds traded for truss falls, laughter mingling with tears as walls crumbled. That night around bonfire stories swirled, betrayals transmuted to badges, society's chains to chosen threads. A letter from Rowan arrived mid-festival, Seattle postmark. Heard you're leading charges. Miss the fire, stay wild. Amusement over ache now, her echo a fond footnote. Aloan's video message played on loop. You're the retreat now, Elena, inviting others home. Home. The word crystallized as flames died, stars wheeling witness. Summer solstice approached, longest light a promise. Mother planned a garden blessing, inviting the circle, queer and kin mingling under her roses. Father's chair empty, health waning, but his note read aloud. Blessings on brave hearts. As petals fell confetti soft, I felt the arc peak. Love's faith not in forever, but in the fierce now society's tests yielding to testimonies of the tendered soul. The solstice sun crested Monroe's horizon like a vow fulfilled, gilding the garden in hues of honey and hope, and mother's blessing unfolded as sacrament. Hands clasped in a circle that spanned sundresses and Stetsons, queer elders beside church ladies, Juniper's drumbeat underscoring prayers rewritten. May love flow unbound as rivers carve canyons kind. Father's absence loomed, hospice whispers in the air. But his spirit lingered in the wildflowers we'd planted, defiant against drought. I spoke last, voice carrying on breeze. We've all been invited to retreats, some spiritual, some shattering. But the true test? Believing love endures the unraveling. Eyes met mine, nods rippling like affirmation, and in that moment the mending felt complete. Father passed 2 weeks later, dawn breaking gentle on the ranch's remnants, his hand cooling in mine as monitors flatlined to silence. The funeral was a tapestry torn and rewoven, eulogies blending brimstone with benediction. His will read to reveal bequests, not just land but funds for the library's queer archive, a quiet codicil scrawled, for Elena's truths. Mourners murmured shock but mother smiled through tears. He saw you, honey. Whole. Grief came in waves, not tsunamis, walks with Juniper along creek beds, sharing sobs over sage tea. Sarah's care package, onesies embroidered with rainbows for the coming niece. Aloan's call bridged distances, her voice steady. Grief's a garden too, plant fiercely. Leora's Nashville chapter closed with a visit, her fellowship ending in fanfare. But our paths diverged graceful, coffee in Waco, hugs lingering like half-said sonnets. You're etched in me, she said, and the words sufficed, no chains forged from fond farewells. The circle absorbed the loss, expanding to grief circles, spaces where loss transmuted to legacy. Women mourning partners, parents, selves once hidden. Sarah's daughter arrived in August, a squall of cries and curls named Solana, her tiny fists clutching air like futures. Godmother duties called me to Austin often, rocking the babe under pecan trees. Mia's lullabies and Spanish weaving spells of serenity. She'll know your stories, Sarah promised, and the charge humbled, a lineage of loves passed like torch. Autumn deepened resolve. The archive project burgeoned, digitizing diaries from southern lesbians of yore. Letters yellowed with longing, photos faded but fierce. Collaborations bloomed. Aloan's Gorge group sharing oral histories, Tessa's herb scenting virtual unveilings. A podcast launched, Veils and Vows. My voice narrating episodes on faith's fractures. Downloads spiking from Bible Belt to bayous. Invites followed, TEDx in Dallas, panels in New Orleans. Each platform a pulpit reclaimed, society's strictures shrinking to footnotes. Winter's hush brought convergence. Aloan and Tessa's anniversary retreat in Monroe. Their arrival a whirlwind of sage bundles and gorge gossip. We hosted at Mother's, now mine, the farmhouse echoing with women's wisdom. Circle expanded to overnight, bonfires birthing breakthroughs. One eve, as snow dusted rare, Aloan pulled me aside. You've become the invitation. Her eyes held no old charges, just pride. And our hug sealed sisterhood, tests transfigured to testimonies. Solana's first Christmas sparkled. Tiny bells on her booties, the family, chosen in blood, gathered round tree aglow. Father's photo watched from mantle, smile softened, and as carols swelled, I felt his presence in the harmony. Love's layered, losses luminous. Juniper proposed to her partner, a quiet ceremony in the vineyard. Rings exchanged under vines heavy with promise. I officiated, words woven from Willowbrook's wells. In a world of walls you choose windows, love as liberation. Spring's thaw mirrored inner bloom. A new romance flickered at a Houston Lit Fest. A filmmaker named Arden 34, with documentary dreams on rural queers, her camera capturing not just frames but souls. We bonded over bourbon and B-movies, her tales of Appalachian roots twining with mine, kisses kindled in alley after-parties. Slow courtship suited, weekends in her studio editing footage of Monroe's Circle, her lens lingering on my laugh. "You're the story I didn't know to seek," she said one dawn. Coffee steaming as credits rolled on our shared screen. Society's echoes persisted. A state bill threatening queer education, rallies rising like dust devils. We marched in Austin, signs scrawled "Faith without fear." Solana in a carrier on Sarah's chest gurgling defiance. Arden filmed it all, her doc Southern Veils premiering months later at South by Southwest, my interview a centerpiece. Love tested my faith, not in God but in us. And we passed. Applause thundered, tears flowed, the screening a solstice of sorts, light longest in shadows named. Years folded forward, the retreat's ripple widening. Willowbrook chapters in Texas barns, a Lowen's model multiplied. Arden and I built life layered. Her film's funding travels, my archives archiving us. Weddings wove in. Juniper's hilltop vows, Sarah's vow renewal under magnolias. Mother's garden thrived, a queer Eden of herbs and hopes. On the 10th anniversary of that lavender-sealed letter, I stood in the birch grove, Vermont calling back. Eloan beside, gray threading her braid. "You tested me," I said, hand in hers. "And I thank you." She smiled, sage in her pocket. We test each other, to remember love's the truest faith. As leaves rustled benediction, I felt the circle complete. From betrayal's bite to belonging's bloom, society's chains to soul's unchained song. In America's vast, veined heart south to peaks, we loved on, human and whole, the story ever unfolding.